Needlepoint, the record collector podcast with Paul Lester and Daryl Easlea.
Hi, I'm Paul Lester, editor of Record Collector, Britain's oldest and longest enduring music monthly.
My name is Daryl Easlea. I too work for Record Collector, and I'm the editor of Record Collector's Rare Record Price Guide.
This is our new podcast, Needlepoint, where we look at rock's rich tapestry, as Judy Birchall once called it, through the prism of the latest issue of our magazine.
And welcome to the 9th episode of Needlepoint. And we take it a little like an LP. We have one long concept work, if you like, on side one, where we talk about the most recent magazine and its cover story, which this time is the wonderful Jarvis Cocker talking about his record collection. And side two is a selection of varied tracks of varying lengths and a little bonus single perhaps taking us on a flight of fancy. Who knows?
We very much enjoyed earlier this year going to spending some time at John Lydon's house and perusing his record collection. That went down pretty well, so we thought we'd have another go at another musician of a slightly different stripe, one Jarvis Cocker. And he very kindly invited us into his home, and he showed us the contents of his record collection. This, I should tell listeners out there, this is a spin-off of a regular Record Collector feature, isn't it, called The Collector?
Yes.
And generally the collectors are readers or people in the industry, and they show us the contents of their record boxes and shelves, and it's all very enjoyable and interesting. This takes it up a notch because it's Jarvis Cocker, who's just had his first number one album for 15 years. He's been in the music industry for 37 years. He's a household name. So it's really interesting to see what records he's got, when he bought them, and what they mean to him.
Absolutely. And he's, as we all know, Jarvis is incredibly disarming and a great interview. And Jason Draper, long-term Record Collector, contributor, one-time reviews editor, went over to his house. And it's a really warm, friendly, sort of freewheeling exchange where we've got over about 40 records that he chooses and talks about. And I think he says, Jarvis says something, I won't do the impression much, but I think would chime with a lot of our readers and listeners, which is I like records that take you out of the flow of normal life, records that make an impression on me, make me stand still. And I think that's the brilliant thing with what we do, because there's one, collecting it, however you take it, music is beautiful to hear, and it can take you somewhere else very quickly.
And it's especially interesting when it's a record collection of the breadth and depth and variety of his. I mean, even before I saw the collector piece and it came in from Jason, who used to be my work experience boy at Uncut magazine. True story. I used to live in Sheffield. He used to ring me home and implore with me, beseech me to come. She beseech somebody, beseech me to come to one of his band Pulp's gigs, because they were really tiny in those days. I remember one gig, it played in front of a proverbial 3 Men and a Dog, where he played with the tambourine. It was just, it was a very early Pulp thing to do.
When I was at Universal, we did a box set called 5 Easy Pieces about Scott Walker.
Right.
It was compiled by Callie, the Nick Drake man. Joe Black worked on it. And we did a launch night. I was doing the press then, and I did a launch night called An Evening Without Scott Walker. And Jarvis came and DJ'd for it. And I'll never forget him being pinned to the wall by a pop star who shall remain nameless, sort of quite late in the evening as everything flowed, and Jarvis looking a bit like startled. But it was a marvellous showbiz moment.
Well, you mentioned Scott Walker. There are two records I associate with Jarvis before I've even seen the contents of his record collection, because he talks about them so much. One is Scott Walker, who gets, he loves his work, much as Julian Cope did, circa Fire Escape in the Sky, 1981. He had two goes, being revived as a living legend. But also Space by Magic Fly, that kind of proto synth pop single from 1977. Every time Jarvis mentions music and stuff that he likes to play while he's out DJing, that invariably gets mentioned. But actually, it didn't get mentioned in this piece over the 12 pages.
Well, no, I mean, there was no surprise. I was wondering how long will it be before Scott appears, and indeed he's in there. And obviously you'd know that one of the first records Jarvis ever bought and listened to was Mouldy Old Dough. Like, I think everyone who was a certain age when they heard that went off and formed, they say people at the Velvet Underground went off and formed, punk bands. I think everyone who heard, Mouldy Old Dough went off and formed Pulp or My Life Story or Fat Truckers or something like that.
Who's the Pulper likes featuring Jamie Fry?
What El Brutus?
Oh, Brutus. Aren't they a Lieutenant Pigeon and the likes?
Yeah, they love it. They used to come on stage, I believe, to Mouldy Old Dough. And also, of course, when Jarvis dabbled with Relaxed Muscle, which was that little
Oh,
turn
right.
he had when he was trying to run away from Pulp, I think there was a sort of strong Lieutenant Pigeon vibe there.
Pulp are one of those bands who, like Sparks, actually, I think we might have had this conversation before. It's either you can't believe how big they got because they're actually a bunch of cult weirdos, or you are amazed that they didn't get any bigger. I can't quite decide which it is. Is it amazing that they've had a number one, or should they really have been at 66 the whole way through? How did it happen that they crossed over and became household names? That's just so weird.
Problem, it was like I was talking with someone yesterday about Baby Bird, another of Sheffield's finest,
Yes.
where one record comes out and then suddenly everything shifts. And then you're sort of, do you follow that record and continue in that vein, or do you do something different? So many pop stars have faced this over the years. I mean, Neil Young famously doing his Ditch trilogy after to take him, he was seen as middle of the road, so he drove the car off the ditch. And obviously Pulp did that with This Is Hardcore. I mean, that album was like one long sort of goodbye to pop in the shadow of Common People, in the same way Baby Bird had to run away from You're Gorgeous. But I think they're a cult band that got very big, and the lovely thing now is I think he's delighted with that and enjoying it. And we saw them at Glastonbury, or those triumphant gigs. They're taking their bow, but with a great album. I mean, I really, really like that album.
What I sometimes wrestle with in my mind is, why do I much prefer that other Sheffield songwriter who writes about love, Martin Fry? Very similar age. I'd rather listen to the Lexicon of Love than probably any Pulp record. But it kind of pains me that Pulp actually were the ones that were able to sustain a career as a big act in the 90s and beyond, whereas ABC were relegated to the sort of chicken in a basket, glorified sort of 80s revival circuit.
But I think where Martin would be writing about the glory of the look, or the fabric and the material, Jarvis would be writing about the label in the back of the collar or the lining or something.
How much scrimpling was involved?
Well, but I think that in a way, you can only talk about Ivory Towers so much.
Yeah.
And I think what Jarvis was able to do, in a way Martin Fry tried with Beauty Stab. I mean, you listen to United Kingdom, people weren't ready for ABC to sing a protest song. But actually, you listen to it, and it's almost like the 80s and what happened after in a nutshell. But maybe it was the fact that Jarvis, told you about the wood chip on the wall and things like that. We all knew what that meant, and in the supermarket in Common People, and even when you're listening to things like Help the Aged and stuff on the new album, he's got that ability. I suppose a bit like Alan Bennett. I mean, he's I'm having a lovely cream puff. That was my Alan Bennett, not my Jarvis Cocker. Although you could imagine Alan Bennett do it. I want to live like the common people.
Funny, you mentioned Common People. I was listening to Razzmatazz, an earlier Pulp single. I didn't realise at the time, actually, it's a dry run for Common People in terms of subject matter and just delivery, all of it really, which is why it kind of emphasises the sort of strangeness of Common People being a huge, huge hit, when it could have been Razzmatazz or it could have been neither, because it's such a kind of peculiar thing to be doing in 1993 or 4.
Well, I think Babies gave it that lovely, that was what got them the ears pricked up.
That's the bridge, isn't it? Maybe, yeah.
Beforehand. I mean, do you remember the first time? Great, but it was still like an indie single.
Lip Gloss as well as the other one,
yeah.
But yeah, no, so they were either doing successful Pulp early or they were doing weird Pulp late.
And the great thing with this new album, it's a bit like, I don't know, it might be like when Amazon buy James Bond. They'll probably do, the bits we all love with just enough difference to keep it fresh for the 21st century. And, it's a bit like that, or a bit like when they recreate an old pub in a sort of working museum. It looks the same, but it's not the same.
Because we mentioned John Lydon doing a similar thing, going back to his house into his music, done it with Jarvis. I thought I'd ask it might be a good idea to ask the listener, the dear listener, as Vanessa Phelps puts it. Who else would you like to see us talk about their record collections and go into their homes with? We actually have got somebody doing just that. I won't say who it is, don't give the game away, but it is a pretty massive named figure, isn't it? Due to appear in the Christmas issue, showing us the contents of his record collection. But who else do you think, dear listener, would be a good one to do similar with and give them that treatment?
Right down below, put it in the thing. Also, give us a like and a follow on whatever platform you're listening, and we're at recordcollectormag.com. See us on there as well. Now, I mentioned James Bond there. This album here, the James Bond collection, the special 10th anniversary edition. This came out in 1972, just after the release of Diamonds Are Forever. And it was the most beautiful, it was a mystical thing as a young child, where it had a little booklet inside it with stills from the films, and my booklet's nearly fallen out. Why I'm mentioning this is it's in Jarvis's collection. There it is, and he liked it. I couldn't get rid of it because it's got such a nice sleeve, a booklet with great photos from the films and this typewriter kind of text. And for many, this was a gateway into John Barry's work.
That's a box set that came out in 72.
No, it's a double album that came out in 72, maybe early 73. It is fascinating because it was Warner United Artists started to do these sort of compilation retrospectives, and this was so successful they did lots of others. This was a UAD, if I remember correctly, 60027, and there were like Shirley Bassey ones in this as well. I've got a nice Fats Domino one, but it was just brilliant, and poured over the pictures, and it just made me think about someone of Jarvis's age, someone of our age. All these things sort of fed in before the internet came along, and now you can listen to everything. If you liked a James Bond film, the only way you could sort of be part of it going forward was to have the soundtrack.
Well, you and Jerry Sadowitz would have been poring over the same stuff around the same time, because he's a mad John Barry fan, isn't he?
Absolutely. And I mean, Barry, what a fascinating character. And which brings us back to Pulp again. They did the album Seductive Barry, the track Seductive Barry, which was either Barry Wyatt, John Barry. And of course, John Barry, if you ever read that John Barry working with Duran Duran, is a very interesting piece as well on A View to a Kill.
Who didn't get, was it them or was it Aha that didn't get on very well with him?
Oh no, Aha really didn't get on very well with him. But I think he was just, he was I believe they use that phrase, bluff northerner.
Said it as it was. Well, it's like Jarvis spoke his mind.
Yeah.
Said things as they were. Jarvis, in his sense, he probably wishes he was this. He wishes he was the young kid in Kes grown up.
I thought he was.
Well, anyway, I guess we should mention some of the other features in the issue.
Absolutely. So do have a look at that. Lovely. All the prices with it. We got Francois Hardy in there, Dr. John the Night Tripper, Quantum Jump, the Lone Ranger. Remember that? Rupert Hines' finest. Do you remember that one? It was a Kenny Everett video show, and it was the lips at the start.
Isn't Lone Ranger, doesn't it get used 10 years later as the basis for one of the early rap songs?
I think it does.
Yeah,
it does. And I would
say,
say,
should also mention that if you perusing the Jarvis feature and enjoying it, bear in mind that the photos were taken by a bit of a legend herself, Jeanette, formerly of Public Image Limited, and Jarvis's manager.
Jeanette Lee, yeah, absolutely.
Nice photos, and they they're peppered throughout the piece, gives it a nice intimate quality.
Very much so. He was there. The boy was there. But what else have we got? Fascinatingly, he hadn't been featured in the mag for nearly a decade, although he's mentioned in your sentences every 10. Todd Rundgren, a marvellous.
He's kind of on the cover because he's featured going across the top of the front cover. They call it's a technical term, listeners, a drop-in. That's what we offer the stars if we haven't quite got room for a front cover, or if we're slightly nervous about their ability to connect to the mainstream public or the wider public. We give them a drop in. Actually, Todd should get the full cover treatment. He has had it a couple of times in this country before, not as often as you might imagine. He got a Sounds front cover in 1977, true, and I think Shindig gave him a front cover about 8-9 years ago. But apart from that, he gets fewer because he was massive at the time. It does surprise me that he doesn't get treated more often to the front covers, given the front cover treatment, like a Nick Drake might, or one of those figures. But it's a very interesting piece. I think I might have said this in one of the previous Needlepoints, but he talks about Lou Reid, which I don't think he's ever done before, and the similarity of Endeavour from summer 1975, where they both wound up being influenced by the same esoteric writer, Alice A. Bailey, and her treatise on cosmic fire. Todd named a track after, a side-long track after a treatise on cosmic fire. But I think Lou Reid across town was working with similar intent on a record, also influenced by Bailey, but rather different, I guess. Metal Machine Music, although Todd's initiation album from '97 was a bit of an opus when it came to, I don't know if it's metal. I don't know, describe it, Metal Machine Music. It was certainly a lot of noise and synthesizers were being used in the making of that project.
Listenable.
But you've got a couple of copies of it because you bought one recently.
Yeah. No, look, it's both of them. I know. I would just like to say, dear listener or viewer to Needlepoint, where we unpick rock's rich tapestry stitch by stitch, is that this is now the 9th time Paul has mentioned the fact that Initiation and Metal Machine Music are related. Todd Rundgren is indeed a great artist.
You know what I haven't mentioned, though, that at the end of the feature, which is really interesting because the words are good. It's a good interview with Felix Rowe, a writer. Yeah. He's done a really good job.
Yeah.
You get some nice pictures of Todd with other artists, with David Bowie, because you might not have been aware he did meet Bowie and things happened. Stevie, Alice Cooper, Freddie Mercury. It's a great one. Ones that I hadn't seen. Yeah. Certainly not in the 70s and 80s when I was growing up and being fascinated by this man.
No, really, really good. And another person who is very fascinating is Terry Reid, and we were very fortunate to get a sort of unpublished previous interview from Nick Hasted in the feature about Terry Reid, who left us a couple of months ago. And it's a really lovely, I know a lot, I've heard from a lot of sort of readers and a lot of fans and all that of the mag that, Terry Reid, if you know him and you know the story, you love him, you're there. I mean, I know this could be any artist, but even obscure artists maybe have the hit or the big collaboration that lots of people are aware of. But I think Terry Reid is still sort of, for the main, quite invisible. And I think which is what is so great about this feature is it really sort of doing some of the though I say so, some of the best things we do, you don't have to know everything to enjoy it. But if you do, you're getting more out of it.
He says that he has no regrets. He was asked to join Zepp, wasn't he? And Bad Company, was that right? Was it? But he declined. I always get confused between the superstar rock behemoths that he was invited to join, and then the ones that were invited to join the Stones, like Strawberry Letter 23 chap.
Shuggy Otis.
Shuggy, he was asked, wasn't he?
Yeah.
There's a whole panoply of people, but I thought he was.
Was because he's mainly on Black and Blue, which is coming out as a souped up edition. There were various others. Wasn't Jeff Beck around? And I mean, they were just going through their things. No, was Rye in the frame? Rye Bread, of course. Rye should have joined.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That would have been great. David Gates and Rye Cooder together. Rye Bread. You can see it.
Like we were saying about Pulp, could have been massive, could have been a cult. And Terry Reid could have been massive, but he's turned out to be a cult figure. Still no less interesting and worthy of inspection.
To be very sort of happy with that, I mean, some of those old cats can be quite bitter, and he wasn't at all. Tell you someone who isn't bitter at all in the mail. Lovely to read, Maddie Pryor, Steel Eye Span.
Sort of a new feature, because we have a feature called 33 to Third Minutes which is a page Q&A interview with the star. This is 45 minutes so it's a slightly longer, it's a shorter piece of, we're alluding to a shorter format, but it's a longer, wait till we get onto the 78 minutes with. But I think it works.
Actually, a 16-minute one at the other end.
Yeah, I think some artists just need more room. I mean, it doesn't have to be the bigger they are, the more space they get. It might be we've got an amazing interview with Maddie Pryor. We need more than a page. It's good to have a bit of flexibility, especially God help them in this day and age where we're dealing with artists that are there 1 minute and gone the next.
Well,
as we speak, poor old John Lodger's passed.
Yeah.
We saw him 2 months ago.
I mean, that is so sad because, I mean, it's only Justin left now. All of the original movies went, the first 5, and now they've started on that old Reaper. He's out and about, isn't he? I tell you what, 33 and a third. We will cover John Lodge more in the next issue, of course. Samantha Fox. Talk about going from one extreme to another. You got Sam Fox and Maddie Pryor. Two
Samantha the Door Blimey. Yeah, I know. Yeah, Sam Fox and Maddie Pryor in one issue. That's a good broad issue, isn't it?
It's Record Collector.
I made a mental note to ask you a question actually about another artist that features in this issue. It's the Saints. Bob Geldof, if memory serves, he really liked them. But I've just commissioned an article on that band Eater, the punk band Eater, who released a record when I think members of the band were only 15 or 16. I think somebody claimed that their debut single was the third ever punk single to be released. New Rose, I always thought was the first, but was it actually the Saints?
Yeah, it all depends what you class as punk, dear boy. There we go. You know, because obviously, Ramones had released something in the States prior to that. So if you, I think, isn't New Rose the first UK punk single?
Maybe that's what it is. First UK and Eater's debut is the third. I don't know what the second is. Anarchy. So New Rose is September 76. Yeah, maybe Anarchy's November, is it? October.
No, I think it was later. I think, wasn't it? No, Thinking in the USA was their second single, wasn't it? Because the drummer wasn't he only 13? I think at the time.
Eater?
Oh, yeah, was it Degenerate?
The cross between him, whoever the youngest in Eater was, and whoever was the youngest in Slits.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, I can't remember. I'm trying to. The memory banks are going through because I remember it was that time where, as a kid, you know, I was 11 and looking at punk. They all came out each week. It was like Eater, Lurkers, Cortinas, you know, Blam Blam Blam, Johnny Moped. You know, you had the Damned and the Clash and the Pistols, and you know, and it was and that sort of debate that no doubt you had being a bit older and much older people. If we'd been this age, then it'd be, well, you know, the Boomtown Rats aren't punk. They're an Irish show band that play records fast. And Johnny Mope, aren't they pub? And, you know, that sort of thing. But when you're 11, it's all the same. You know, that was what the Stranglers. I mean, the Flat.
Well, the ones with keyboards, the ones that were later could sort of reasonably be argued to be punk. Anyone with a keyboard from that Wire, Stranglers, Simple Minds, they had keyboards, didn't they? But at the time, they did all seem about the same. There was a sense that something else was going on with some of those bands, though, and you could tell that something was about to happen. And of course, it did in '78 with Public Image and Hong Kong Garden.
We're taking it to what is now
shot by both sides. Of course, this magazine had a keyboard as well.
What is now known as Post.
I'm having to think about this a little bit now because we're fast approaching January '76. 50 years, count them, since punk. 50.
50.
Or 50 and a month if you count the St. Martin's gig that the Pistols did in, was it December '75?
Yeah.
I think we're interviewing Adaman.
We do.
In the next couple of weeks. I'll have to ask you about that.
Yes, we're going to get into, we're going to be doing an anniversary special. Every page a different anniversary.
Well, yeah, I mean, we do tend to do that. A lot of the magazines, the music magazines, who are beneath us in many senses. We are the longest enduring and arguably the best.
You mean behind us in ages of in length of duration we've been on sale?
Yes,
we're all the same. We all love each other. It's music, man.
We do. Of course, I'm used to the
work for all anyway.
I did. I work for most of them, and they were on the separate floor. They were on the 26th. Enemy were on the 25th floor. We were on the 26th, and those were the days when actually things did get a little bit fraught and tense and tetchy between us, because there was they manufactured a rivalry between us that would make Blur and Pulp, Blur and Oasis look like Brotherhood of Man and ABBA.
Now, speaking of Brotherhood of Man, when they won the Eurovision Song Contest, it wasn't in Brighton, but ABBA did in 1974. And look at that. We have in the new issue Lois Wilson, long-serving contributor, all-round great egg, 45 Brighton 45s. We're down in the south coast of England on this issue. And again, such a brilliant format. Should
we keep it going?
Yes. well, readers, listeners, should we keep it going? Let us know. Another
She does a great job with Brighton, and Paul Bowler does a great job with Detroit in the next issue, and then in the Christmas issue we've got a special city. I won't say which one it is, but look out for that one. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's got it has got legs if you. Well, number one, if you break it up into discrete parts, London should be north, south, east, and west.
Yeah.
Thrown it open to European cities and American cities.
Yeah, well, we've sort of done a bit of that already, but I mean, I really love the Brighton one because you've got Darts, the marvelous Darts, who have a sort of shared ownership. It's not all. Bob Fish came from Southend, but
About about. I think one of Simon Price of this parish. Oh, you saw him in concert, didn't you? I think Price.
I went to see Darts and Simon was there with his dear wife Janie and Jake Shillingford from My Life Story. And another, they got a new album coming out, but they were another. He grew up listening to Mouldy Old Dough, which brings us back to the beginning. But yes, Darts are there. So and Lambrettas, they did do it in Piranhas. They did do some slightly weird ones.
The Lambrettas, yeah, we've done. Actually, Lois has done a piece for us on the Lambrettas and their ilk. They were the new wave of new mod, weren't they?
I think we called them plastic mods at the time. Them and the Merc Parkers. I mean, obviously, as a 13-year-old, I was an authority on mod. Who was a plastic mod and who was a real one? Not, obviously. But Lambrettas, of course, got in trouble because they did a label. They were signed to Rocket, so as part of Elton's organisation, but they were doing their own imprint, Two Stroke, which came out just after Two Tone. The sleeve was close enough to be told, don't put it out in that sleeve. So where you had old, oh God, what's his name? The man, the two-tone man has a name. He's a very famous Spiky Jake, Spiny Norman. Oh my God, listener, help me. Where he had that, they did this lovely version of a mod, like in a two-tone style. It's Walt Jabsco, that's who it was. Walt Jabsco is the name of the two-tone man. Thank you.
Because you've forgotten that.
I know.
You mentioned labels just now. We've got a feature. One of the last feature we haven't mentioned from this issue is on Ace Records.
Absolutely.
Formerly Rock On, wasn't it called?
Yeah, Ted Carrot was shop, and Roger Armstrong brought Roger in, and obviously the label goes from strength to strength.
Do we know if that was that? Because I do remember going to Camden, going to Camden record shops in the 70s, 80s. There was a shop where famously Elvis Costello went in and came out clutching a bunch of Stax and Motown releases, and then he happened to go and record an album called Get Happy. Was that Rock On?
Yeah, I think it was.
So, a truly legendary shop.
Absolutely, and Ted is one of those, industry cats. I mean, he founded Chiswick Records first, and he's still selling records today up in Stamford in Lincolnshire, where he retired to. And he's got this brilliant shop, and he's in there. And I think a lot, if not all, please correct me here, of the proceeds go to charity. And of course, it's curated beautifully because there's a man who knows his onions. But this lovely feature, looking at the history of it, and then 40 Ace releases with Michael Heatley's authoritative eye on it. But it's great. It certainly introduced a lot of music, lots of what we would call specialist music to people beyond the tribes, if you like.
There's one point of controversy in the feature because I got contacted by one of our writers and a reader, Tony Cummings, who wrote a brilliant book on Philly soul in the 70s, and he does write for us. He wrote a piece for us recently. In fact, he's doing a piece for us about the way Philly soul segued into disco. He's going to do that for next year. But he contacted me in the week and wrote a letter to the letters page to say that we were a great feature on Rock On / Ace Records, but we weren't quite right about who coined the term Northern Soul. We suggested it was Dave
Godin.
And he said actually it had a slightly different provenance. Have a look in the next letters page if you want to find out, if you want absolute verification of who coined the, because there are arguments about this. I mean, there was quite a lot of heated debate about who coined the term Britpop, and I'm one of the people that said, no, actually that was me. I came up with that, and Stephen Mack thinks it was Stephen Mack, and Simon Williams thinks it was Simon Williams. But anyway, yeah, Northern Soul. Where does it come from? And he came up with a really good rationale for why it was the person he said it was.
Okay, well, I really look forward to hearing that because I mean, I can say the well-worn story, but is that Dave had the record shop and he realised that when on football days, northern teams were playing Arsenal or Tottenham or name your London football club of choice, they would come down and buy a particular sort of soul record from him, which were these sort of fast dancers or very romantic orchestral numbers that hadn't necessarily been big hits. And you had like John Reid working at who became Elton John's manager, working at EMI at the time, who really was on the case with that. Hence, Smokey Robinson's "Tears of a Clown" being number one, which had been on an album 3 years before. But that's why you got that strange sort of blip in the charts there, where you get the Elgins. Heaven Must Have Sent You, one of the greatest records ever made by human hand, being a number 3 or whatever it was in 1971. And it's a 1966 record. Easley's really hitting big around that time, and then Ghost in My House a bit later. It's interesting. I really look forward to hearing it because Tony is a very respected writer, and I love when these things are challenged.
Yeah, well, he's going to be doing a lot of challenging. Look out in the next letters page. It's good. I like it when you respond to. It's nice to get a little bit of writer involvement, so that the reader feels that there is a true connection with the writers. We don't live in an ivory tower. We're not.
And I think it's really important. And I, one of the great things. I mean, I've worked with Record Collector for 25 years. Actually, it might well be. I think it's Monday. I've worked with Record Collector for 25 years. And I.
What do you base that on?
When I started at Ealing.
But how do you know that is Monday, October the whatever? What is it on Monday?
Because what happened, dear reader, I got the job, and then we went on a 10-day holiday at the start of October in 2000 to Amalfi, place in my heart. And I remember, and then I started on the Monday when we got back on the Friday, and I've got a feeling it's very much around here. My point is, 25. What a lovely time. I'll get the carriage clock when I'm in the office next. But it's always listening to readers, and that's so important because it's like the feedback and the connection between the two. And everyone makes mistakes. Everyone gets the wrong thing from time to time. And it's like when I did the top 200. I realised this, especially the moment it went to press, I hadn't put an ideal for living in there. And I don't know what that was, a computer glitch looking through things and things. And of course,
you can be assured that one of the readers pointed it out.
And right.
And to be fair, in a lot of instances, well, not I say a lot of instances, certainly in some instances, the reader knows more than we do, which is when they get invited to contribute an article themselves. Which is how a lot of writers did start, by just doing it, which is the best way to do it. You can't particularly learn it. You can't go to college and get a degree in it. Well, you can, but it don't have much value. It means much more if you turn up at our door and say, "Look, I wrote an article for another magazine." That's much more likely to get you a gig at our magazine than a list of qualifications, as long as you're on. Should we mention the next? We talked about. Well, I talked about obviously so Get Happy a minutes ago. In the next issue of Record Collector, we have devoted the issue, much of the issue anyway, to the year 1980.
We have
the year of Get Happy, the year of the specials, the year of I don't know, Hello, I Am Your Heart by Betty Bright. I mean, it's a great year. So many years have been lionised, haven't they? But I don't know if 1980 has ever had full magazine treatment. People generally tend to argue that 66 is the year to watch out for. Bob Stanley has, I don't know if I've said this before, but he goes for 1981. David Hepworth wrote a book about 1971. So the books are about punk are many of 1976. But has 1980 ever been given the treatment? Because it's right in that, it's that interregnum between post-punk stroke disco's peak, with Bad Girls, Risque, and Off the Wall, and Earth, Wind and Fire as I Am. Yeah, well, I don't know. I was going to say, I was halfway through. Oh, and 1981 was the glory days of synth pop. But what made it 80 interesting? What gives that its fascination? I'd say it was certainly at the beginning of new wave of British heavy metal, oi, punk, had its moment in the sun, but it doesn't quite have the defining kind of, which is why it was interesting to wrestle with what made it so special. That's what we do in the next issue, over 22 pages. Sorry.
Don't apologise for 22 pages on it. It's a loving look at the year, and taking 8 albums that sort of for us sort of signify the year, and you look at the breadth of that, and it's pretty impressive. I think what we'll do is, we will come to it in the next issue, but if you want to have a think while you're listening to this about your highlights from 1980, please don't hesitate to pop it in the link below if you're watching us. And if you're listening to us, have a think and maybe write in or join the debate, as they say. And do follow us. Give us a like and follow. We're Needlepoint, episode 9, Paul. We were young men when this started.
We had it all before, didn't we?
But I mean, I think that thing about 1980 is, it seemed anything was possible, and that's not just me as an old person now looking back, but that way, you read about those things. It's like, pop music is someone trying to do something that someone else has done and not being able to do it, so doing their own version, and it becomes something completely different. And I thought this. I saw Edwyn Collins the other night in concert. And I was thinking of all those white boys trying to be Chic or Earth, Wind and Fire or Kool and the Gang or whatever, because they knew they liked soul music and disco. But obviously,
they liked soul music and disco on the one hand, but on the other hand, they were very much children of the Velvet Underground. So I remember in the NME, one of the writers saying quite tartly at the end of a little piece about Joseph Kay and Orange Juice, the influence of the Velvet Underground, of course, on them is inestimable. Being ironic, because who cares? They were doing it in a new way. But that's what the most striking thing that when I think about 1980, the most vivid sensation I had was, we are so far away from the Beatles now. Isn't it great? They are long, long in the past. Of course, now they are the air that we breathe, and you can't avoid them. But then it felt like we had left them way behind. Stone, Dylan. No, we were listening to Orange Juice, Joseph Kay. We were listening to Funkin' for Jamaica. We were listening to, Scritti Politti, Sweetest Girl. It was fantastic, and they're not remotely Beatlesque.
I was doing that as well, but I was also listening to Coming Up by Paul McCartney, which I just thought was one of the greatest future.
Well, even he wasn't being Beatlesque. Even he'd left the Beatles behind when
he put himself as a Beatle in the video, going
a little nod that said, "You know what? We're just a little footnote in history, along with Ron Mail of Sparks."
But then what happened at the end of the year, sadly, changed everything. And
well, maybe is that right? Do you think if Lennon hadn't been killed by a Todd Rundgren fanatic, but if he hadn't been if he hadn't been assassinated, would things have been quite different? And would the Beatles' hegemony have continued well into the 80s?
It's a very good issue. I think it would. I think it wouldn't have done, because if you remember rightly, when Double Fantasy came out, there was just this enormous meh.
Yeah, that's right.
One of the first times an artist had taken that long away of that level, and of course everyone was waiting to see what he was going to do, and it got slated, but it was just like, okay, nice, you're a nice old man living home with your family. You're only bloody 40, only just.
Yeah, it's a tragic to say, but death became him in the way that that way that Tony Wilson said the best thing that ever happened to Ian Curtis was dying. It's a horrible thing to say. But I remember sitting in a meeting to Melody Maker when In Utero came out, and it was largely dismissed. We were thinking, it's not as good as Nevermind. And where does it take Nirvana? Of course, about 2 weeks later, he died, and the rest is history. It's a sad thing, but it is an interesting question. If Lennon had lived, the Beatles carry on being incredibly influential, but of course they did anyway with the advent of the more mature rock press like Q magazine.
Yeah,
magazines started to be published that realised that actually the present isn't what it's all about in the way that the NME and the Melody Maker foresaw it. The ancient past provided the building block for what we've enjoyed today, and that's important. We mustn't ignore that.
I think it's the past and the present came together, and I think Oasis, all of that would have happened with or without Lennon here. I think that sudden interest in the Beatles and the generational thing, because you had the kids who'd grown up with their parents who were the fans listening to it, or the red and the blue were in the collection. And then they heard it, and there was enough sort of covers of Beatles stuff over the years to keep an interest. And McCartney was still, he still was having number ones in 1984, so he was still sort of the most relevant in chart terms before it all changed.
I suppose it's probably under, but I think about what I was listening to in the late 80s. It was all Young Gods, Pixies, and Public Enemy. It just wouldn't have occurred to me to reach over and pull out my copy of Abbey Road. Listen to this now. It's just there's so many other things to do.
Yeah,
I mean, it feels like a viable option.
I mean, let's not underestimate the NME when they did Sergeant Pepper Knew My Father and that 20th anniversary of Pepper thing where it was everywhere. I think that ignited. Yeah, I mean, I think after John went, yes, of course, but then it sort of died down a bit, and then suddenly the CDs brought them all back into life. With Kid magazine virtually being, an advert for the Beatles every month,
and maybe Live Aid as well. Live Aid kind of reiterated the point about the past, and I know there were some young people in it. Spandau were there, and obviously, but Bowie, and it just felt like it was an opportunity to celebrate the maturity of rock and roll, and acknowledge how long it had been there.
Well, and when we think that's now 40 years ago and Oasis are 30 years ago, and they both had their moment in the sun this year, Live Aid with that play that's doing very well in London, and TV stuff, there's a book coming out. And obviously, Oasis is seen as this glorious, I haven't heard really a bad word against it, even from the people who really want to say bad words against it. They might not like them.
It's now 30 years, I think, since Noel said to Hutchins on stage at the Brits, has been shouldn't give awards to Gunnabees.
Yeah,
that's now at least 3 decades ago. Scary.
Oh, baby, anyway. What I will say,
we should go. I was going to ask you what you've been up to. Look, I actually almost went to 3 gigs this week. I say almost because I got the day completely wrong for the Edwyn Collins gig. I had it under S in my diary instead of S. You see how I might have got confused? Saturday, I had it down. I thought it was Sunday. I got a phone call from Chris Roberts saying, "Where are you? Are you late? Are you down the road?" "No, I'm at home." "Why?" "The Edwyn gig was about to start." Anyway, you tell me it was great. I was really disappointed because was his last ever gig.
Last ever London gig. He's doing, I think he ends in Edinburgh this week, if he hasn't happened already. But a tremendously emotional night, Royal Festival Hall. And Dennis Bovell came on, because, Bovell was basically a member of Orange Juice at the end. The third album, he plays on every track. And he sang a duet with him. And
he'd already remixed the track from the previous album, and he Flesh of My Flesh.
Yeah.
From Rip It Up.
Yeah. And then Paul Cook came on and played drums, and Vic Goddard as well. One-time record collector, hip-hop correspondent Vic Goddard.
He was actually an uncut hip-hop correspondent as well.
Yeah.
I thought I thought I saw Vic Goddard dancing at the front of the Nick Hayward gig that we both went to a couple of days later, actually. A little chap, he had that kind of weird kind of facial structure. He wasn't him.
I think maybe had I not seen him so extensively at the Edwyn Collins gig, and then I chatted with him a bit at the after show, just going, "I loved it when you used to write hip hop for Record Collector." He was a bit like, "Oh, thank you very much." But he kept his car coat on the whole time. That was just brilliant. It was so Goddardian. Yeah, but Paul Cook came on and he started playing the drums. And gee whiz, it was like the hidden lever was pulled and suddenly everything got louder. And
so that's what it was like when they did Favourite Shirts at Union Chapel on when was it, Monday, Tuesday?
Monday, that was.
Monday, yeah. And that was a real, and that's why I thought there was Vic Goddard, because that's the moment that he started really doing heated dance moves.
Oh yeah, there was heated dance, but Vic was brilliant. And then I saw Peter Hamill last week at the Royal Festival Hall, which was one of the most stunning shows I've been to. Just one man on his own with a Steinway piano and then an acoustic guitar, and going between the two. And those songs are dense and dark, and he's got, I don't know, about 490 to choose from, and the sort of 20 he chose were just perfect. It was, to see that, to see Edwyn, to see Nick Hayward, and then to see the beta band returning. It was just amazing that those strange quirks of planning and diary where, I hadn't planned to see 4 gigs in a row, and nor could I afford to very many times going forward. Wow.
I went to Nick. I didn't go to Edwin, but I did go and see Roland Gift from Fine Young Cannibals at the Palladium. I didn't enjoy it musically so much, although it did remind me he did have quite a few hits, and I think in America as well he was mad. I think at one point he was the biggest star on the planet in terms of. He was a pretty funny character actually. I didn't really. Who knew? I knew he had an interesting voice that was either love it or loathe it, but and he wrote popular songs, but he was actually quite good time. He had a bit of what you got going on, the sort of the timing and the delivery of a stand-up comic.
You'd like to think. Well, I've only, but yes, no, I it is always unusual when you see an artist, because Roland Gift always comes across as very earnest when you see him singing. He's not cracking the cakes.
He brings in the right humorous self-debunking on stage.
Yeah.
As well as a few attempts to get messianic fervour going in the audience by holding out his arms like that. Actually, doing it very honestly and saying, "Come on, can I just have a top up?" Yeah, he actually did get it. He did get a feverish response.
I know, I'm sure. I mean, the one, just coming back to that previous point, the one that always got me was when I finally saw George Benson live. Because, I mean, George Benson's an incredible sort of hero. And he played at our local venue, the Cliffs Pavilion, which I think I probably mention every time. And in fact, I'm going to see Level 42 there next week. And he played at the Cliff, that thing where George Benson's a mile and a half down the road. You couldn't get
it. My equivalent of that is Alex O'Neill playing in Watford. You have to go because it's 2 miles from your house.
Oh, no, absolutely. Alex O'Neill live. I mean, look, there's a man that had he been born 2 decades earlier and he'd been in the 60s, we'd be talking about him like he was Otis. I mean, amazing cat. But George Benson's a bit like a light entertainer between the numbers, and he's a bit sort of Tom Jonesy with the old, the mood and everything.
Really?
And it was just so, and I've interviewed him. I've interviewed him for us, and he's been lovely.
Yeah.
I always thought, again, he was like, a happy fellow, but an earnest sort of jazz man. He really was a bit of a song and dance man. So
he's a perfect candidate for a 45 minutes. With 33 minutes was throwing that away.
Well, we did it at the 33 minutes.
We did. We should do him again because his catalogue is pretty extensive. And it was it not 45 years ago today that he was pretty much dominated the airways with his album.
Love Times Love on it as well.
Yeah.
It's almost, I actually thought the other day I was walking down to the station to actually come to Record Collector, and a man, this current fad for not wearing socks. I mean, that comes in and out of fashion. Get a bit parky now to do that, but and he was wearing loafers, penny loafers, and I thought, I wonder, I'd quite like to go and find some white toweling socks again.
I had my moment of that. I had my Essex boy moment in 1981 when I wore Farrows, Gabeaches, and Gucci loafers and white socks.
Yeah.
I went to the Dunk Cow down the Elephant and Castle.
Yeah. Well, amazing.
Kent Road.
And as we said on the last one, dear Chris Hill died, and his funeral's this week at Southend. And I mean, that man was responsible in a lot of ways for getting those records over here and popularising them. So, And
he managed Light of the World, didn't he?
He managed Light of the World. He managed, he signed the Boomtown Rats. He signed Sinead O'Connor. He signed the Waterboys. He signed World Party.
Wow.
With Nigel Grange at Ensign. They were partners.
Unfortunately, he is in the obituary column this month, and we were trying to decide. It was unfortunately a bit of not a bun fight, but we were trying to who should be the lead death. Chris Stranger, Chris Hill, John Lodge, Danny Thompson.
Well, Danny, an enormous film. I mean, what the lovely thing about Danny, not lovely about him passing, but just when you read, your timeline suddenly fills with joy, saying how wonderful he was and the difference he made to so many records that we love.
All the way up to and including the aforementioned ABC.
Indeed.
Do we know which record he played on the ABCs? I'm guessing it would have been Alphabet City, but...
No, it was either Alphabet City or Abracadabra. It was that period. But anyway, listen.
I think we should think about wrapping things up.
We should.
It feels like we've been talking for 20 minutes.
That's when we talk together, Paul. I'd go into a beautiful parallel universe, and I hope you do too, our dear listeners, here on Needlepoint. And don't forget to follow us, love us, and I will say thank you very much. We'll be back next week with our special 10th episode, where all the previous 9 can then be put in a deluxe box set. So until then, it's a very warm goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me. Just to whet your appetite, there will be a Night of the Realm editing of a Christmas issue. We'll be talking about that in weeks to come. But thanks very much for listening. It's been great. Pleasure to have you on board, as it were.
Cotton on to Needlepoint.
Needlepoint, the Record Collector podcast with Paul Lester and Daryl Easlea.